Welcome very, very much to Conversations. A personal pleasure to welcome to the program two gentlemen I've done programming with in the past. And on my far left is Cornelius Ricks, and he's the founder, as we will be talking about, and president of an organization concerned with trying to develop in Harlem a law library that is dearly needed in that part of our city. And he's the founder and president of that, and I'm really happy to see Cornelius again. We'll come right back to you. But on my immediate left is Paul Kerson. He's a lawyer, and he's an attorney and a civil rights concern for some of the people that have been incarcerated. He's got a tremendous record of personal concern for the least among us, as they wisdom schools would tell us. And he's the attorney for this organization, or people that are trying to put together this law library. Good to see you, Paul, again.
Thank you, Harold, for inviting us.
So try to kick it off here, Cornelius. This idea that you have, maybe you could share a little, just a little bit of your own background, but then share the idea for this law library up on Harlem.
So one of the things we have done, we created a law library, working on creating a law library in Harlem, but one of the things we've done is we did a program called Behind the Bench.
Yeah, I remember.
Right, and basically by doing the program called Behind the Bench, we started dealing with legal issues in the urban community. And by dealing with the legal issues in the urban community, we found out that a lot of people that were coming into the events at the public library basically knew nothing about the law. I mean, they didn't even know how to file a petition. They didn't know how to file even an application for like dealing with any type of legal issues going down to the courthouse.
Even though inordinately they are being harassed, as it were, by a legal system that does not give equal understanding to their particular situation. Inordinately, the law works against their interests. Well, and it would be good for the people there to know what they might be able to do, what some of the remedies would be.
Right. Well, you know, the thing is that that's an issue too. But the bottom line, if you don't know the law, you don't know if they're arresting you or not.
Right.
The bottom line is that what we have to understand is that when you deal with issues a lot of times, the issues itself has to be filed. I mean, a lot of people have a dream or have an idea why they want to file a petition, but unless you put it in court, it never happened.
Or how to do it in the
Or how to do it in court.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why we put together Behind the Bench, for them to get a chance to talk to retired judges and lawyers. But one of the reasons why I did it as well, because I was disenfranchised in the system. I was actually beaten up and told to keep my mouth shut, which I wrote a judge up on dictionary conduct, and 3 weeks later I was beaten up and told by an officer that this came from the judge. So my whole point is that, like Paul always tells me, I can't prove it. But the bottom line is that when the officer beat me up, he made it very clear to me who beat me up, where it came from. For me dealing with challenging my case, of them fabricating a case on me, and basically by doing that, I was in a bus accident.
Would it be fair to say you were radicalized by that?
No, I was not.
No.
So the bottom line is that by
right?
doing that, what happened was I was in a bus accident. But basically by being in a bus accident, I messed up my back and my neck. I turned around and sued the state of New York. And by suing the state of New York, I was wearing a neck brace and back brace. They sent me upstate, they ended up beating me up and told me to keep my mouth shut, snatch my neck brace and back brace off. Something like a month later, they brought me back down to court, resentenced me on a fabricated case. It was a 1991 case because I was suing the state of New York. What happened by doing that, I was beaten up 3 or 4 times within the system and told to keep my mouth shut every time I filed a petition. So by getting in touch with Judge Paul Kerson, getting in touch with the attorney Paul Kerson.
He's been your attorney.
He's been my attorney for the past 10, 15 years.
Good for you,
So
Paul.
by doing that, by him being my attorney, he was sitting on the bench and he said that the only way that he can help people as far as like being disfranchised in the system is that he has to leave the bench and start dealing with his law practice. So basically that's what he's done. He filed a major lawsuit, went into federal court against the state of New York. He actually saved my life.
Really?
Yes.
Literally?
I mean, literally. If Paul Kerson did not step in on the issues when these people were attacking me, terrorizing me, I think I'd be a dead man today.
Perhaps because of your own action?
Well, the action of me filing a lawsuit. When do you think you understand that the state of New York do not want anybody filing a lawsuit against the state of New York? They would do any means by anything necessary to stop you from filing this particular lawsuit. So basically, when Paul started his petition, I already had a petition in court from the bus accident wearing a neck brace and back brace. Today, I still have neck, back, and head problems, like with headaches from the beatings that I received, from the beatings I received in the bus accident. So basically, by doing,
they should be redressed for that if the system had anything like elemental justice as part of it. Well, seems to me, if I may, just as a citizen.
But you know, but Paul, real quick. But the thing is, what I'm saying, by Paul saving my life by dealing with this particular issue, it became an issue where we actually filed a personal lawsuit against the state of New York as well as the governor, George Pataki. By doing that, it seemed like within the system itself, I felt like, why do we have to go all the way upstate New York to become legal paralegals within the state of New York? Why do we have to go to Rikers Island to become paralegals in the state of New York? If they think in America we should have the right to read every book, why can't we read a law book? So one of the things I found out that there was not a law library or any place we can go to actually to deal with addressing legal issues unless you are going to school at Columbia University, or you're going to John F. Kennedy College, or if you're going to a school that has a law library, or you're studying law, you can use their facility.
Yeah, a law library is a unique thing. We're going to want to talk about what a law library. Maybe Paul, you could kick in. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Today, it's mostly computerized.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It used to be law books. That is, all the statutes of a state and of the United States were collected in beautiful.
Leather
bindings, right?
They
filled
the
black
walls.
Bindings for the New York State law, and red ones for federal law, and they were, hundreds of volumes. And then all the decisional law was kept in tan volumes, and beautiful. It looked beautiful on the
I didn't
shelves.
know it was color coded that way. You'd have to be a lawyer to know that.
Well, it was a company called West Publishing Company, which is the leading publisher of law books.
Okay.
Now it's sold and merged. I think it's called Thompson West now. But in any event, this has all been superseded by technology. All this stuff is now not on the internet, but it's an intranet, I-N-T-R-A net.
Yeah.
And you have to subscribe. So, lawyers, we subscribe, and we get all of our law books on a computer. It's actually a better system because with indexing, we used to have big red volumes called Shepard's Citations, where you looked up the index and you had to figure out how the law all fits together. That's what being a lawyer in a democracy is actually difficult, because there's no one place where decisions are made. In medieval France, you had the Napoleonic Code.
Yeah, it was different.
You looked in the book and, okay, this is what the Napoleonic Code says, end of discussion. Now it's, what did the city council say? What did the state legislature say? What did the Congress say? What did the local county courts say? What did the state courts say? What did the federal courts say? How does it all fit together on any given question? So it's not such an easy
It can be very Byzantine, can't it?
Yes, it can.
Yeah.
So anyway, the computerized indexes make it a lot easier to do it.
Okay.
So the question is, how do you make this available to the general public, which it's not, because it's an expensive subscription process. And then even assuming we could make it available to the general public, learning how to use it, it's a skill now. I mean, it was always a skill, but now it's an even more sophisticated skill, because you have to be computer literate, which it didn't used to be.
Yeah.
So, and then, of course, as Cornelius points out, there's many, many books about law.
Yes.
Various authors will write a book about law. The best one, Gideon's Trumpet by Anthony Lewis. That's
Anthony Lewis. Yeah, I remember Anthony. Yeah,
that's a book about why court-appointed lawyers are so important, and how the first one got started, and what Gideon did, and what Abe Fortas did, and what the U.S. Supreme Court did, and how important that all is. Anyway, there's lots of books like that.
Yeah.
So what I learned, Cornelius was kind enough to invite me to his program, which he organized, called Behind the Bench.
I've been there to a couple of those. Really good.
What a wonderful
session.
program.
Yeah.
What a great public service. We go to the Harlem branch of the New York Public Library.
124th, right?
Yeah. East 124th Street.
Yeah.
And we take questions.
Right.
And he has the most interesting panelists.
They sure do. And audience.
Yeah, an assistant attorney general, somebody from neighborhood legal services, a retired housing court judge.
That's on the panel, but the people in the audience who have issues are getting themselves pretty up to steam and being able to understand what the heck they can do to combat the injustice of the system and the confusion of it as it can be put forward.
The people of the audience are the people of the community who show up and have questions. So rarely is a panel like that assembled where the ordinary citizen can come in and say, look, question. Yeah. It's a wonderful thing that Cornelius has done. Anyway, so I'm very pleased to participate.
Right.
And every time we go, there's very intelligent questions, a lot about criminal law, a lot about landlord-tenant law. Those, I would say, are the two biggest topics.
Yeah. And about being hassled on the street, there's that.
There's that.
It's inordinately directed at brown and black people, it seems to me, in the interest of New York, in the environs of New York.
What you guys have to understand is that what I find very interesting about the program itself, we didn't realize, Paul has been on board with his law firm, And what happens is we didn't realize how serious this issue was. I mean, I was disfranchised in the system, and if I knew what I knew now, I think I'd be in better shape than I am today.
Okay.
But the thing is that what I'm saying to you is that what Paul has done by being so loyal to the program, and by even when I came with the concept of the law library, Paul said to me, "What?" I said, "Yeah, a law library." He looked at me, he thought that was completely insane. And then he started thinking about it. He goes, "Look at this. I want that." He goes, "That there is a perfect idea that we can actually deal with addressing issues, and we also will have lawyers on call at the law library as well, with paralegals, and we also will be just, it's the same way that you deal with, the same way you start dealing with interns in emergency rooms, the doctors dealing in the emergency room. We've had interns working within the law library, which we request from the school. They have to give a certain amount of hours to work in the law library.
Now, when you say you have a library at the university, my daddy was at the Ann Arbor at law school. They have they have a library and everything like that. Or if you're in medical school, they have medical, Grey's Anatomy,
exactly.
The curriculum by which you learn and everything. Are there law libraries that exist along the lines of what you're thinking of now in America, or are you plowing new ground?
No. What's happening there? What's happening in the state of New York? There are not public libraries. Some areas of New York City have public libraries inside inside the public library.
Okay.
But Ballins here, I haven't found one yet. So basically what happens, if you want to do research, you got to pay almost $30 to $40 every year to go into Columbia University or go to City College or do even down here.
Where they have a subscription to it, like you would have.
You would be like a membership card. In other words, the only way you can be able to use that library, you have to be able to pay a fee. So a lot of times poor people cannot pay fees.
That'd be like the people in banking have to have Bloomberg wire. In order to function, they need a subscription.
Exactly.
Even if you can
along those
you
lines,
still have to have somebody there to help you learn how to use it.
Right.
It's not self-evident.
We used to have things like legal aid and things where people of little means and so forth. If you had millions of dollars, you can get the top lawyer and that kind of stuff. But if you don't, they used to have legal aid. Those kind of things are not working adequately to handle the needs of people, particularly the least advantaged people.
The Legal Aid Society is dangerous. The Legal Aid Society gets paid by the state, and based by being paid by the state, they work for the state. And a lot of times within the Legal Aid Society, what would happen, the Legal Aid Society, for them not taking they will always want you to cop a plea. So by you copying a plea, they make a certain amount of money on cases if they do not take it to trial. I mean, that's something I read.
The system needs improvement.
Talk about it.
They want you to take the plea.
Is it systemic? There's systemic problems
in the black community.
There's
Negro law. There's Negro law and there's white law.
Okay, we mentioned that.
Okay, but the thing is, what I'm saying,
Negro
trying to say to you,
justice and white justice.
Yes,
and the racism is still alive and well.
Exactly right. This is the problem. It's an economic problem. If you have the money, you can hire your own lawyer.
That's right. You can get
Bailey. If you are a private lawyer, we each have 50 cases, 100 cases, 200 cases. That's a lot, 200.
Yeah.
Legal aid, 600. Now, if you've got 600 cases,
there's only so many hours in a day.
There's only so many hours in a day.
Right.
Yeah, but
so, how can you do it? How can you do as good a job? Now,
this is racism
there's
exists.
Plenty of very, very good people in the Legal Aid Society, no question about it.
Yeah.
But the caseloads are too high, and that's a function of money. The state,
because there's usually not money there.
Excuse me, but Paul, can I say something to that, please?
Yeah,
please,
sure.
let me say
Go
something
ahead.
to that. Paul, I can understand exactly what you're saying, but what you're you're kicking the can down the road. And the bottom line is, by kicking the can down the road, racism exists here in America, and it's at the highest, especially dealing with legal issues in the urban communities. Anytime you have a black youth that deals with a grain of crack cocaine and gets 25 to life, and you have a white guy that has a kilo of cocaine and he only gets probation or even get a violation for a substance like that, it's absolutely ridiculous. Anytime you have a white kid down on the Upper West Side that blew up a Starbucks, blew the Starbucks up. They gave him a 1 to 3 2 weeks ago. Okay, then you had also these two brothers that were caught with the FBI agents set them up where they were actually selling Toys R Us guns out of a trunk of a car. And by selling these, they were claiming they were going to blow up planes. They ended up giving the Toys R Us guns. Now they wasn't even real guns. They ended up giving them 25 to life.
Now there's
when you start dealing with the Scott's case, I want to give you examples.
I'm not familiar.
Excuse me. Well, there's two Scott sisters.
Yeah, it's
the
in
ones
the news now.
The ones that just removed released from prison to give her sister a kidney. Okay, the governor. The reason why the governor released him because they knew the charge was harsh and enhanced. And on top of that, he made racial statements earlier about black folks in this country. So basically what he's doing now is by being a little sensitive to the sisters, but the sisters should have never been in jail. They robbed a man for $1.50, a white guy for $1.50. They gave them 15 to life. Okay, for robbing a white guy for $1.50. $1.50. They don't tell you how much it was.
I hate to think of it to believe it was $3.
Yes, but I'm trying to say to Paul, I understand what Paul is saying about the legal aid.
Joke,
about the legal, but it's just not a joke.
Yeah, I understand.
About the legal aid society, the legal aid societies sometimes with us is not the greatest thing for our community. The 18B lawyer is a better lawyer. 18B.
Okay, let me explain about that.
Please.
Okay, legal aid society, and there's also various legal aid society competitors who have a contract with the city to handle a certain number of cases.
Okay.
Now, what if there's a conflict? That is, oftentimes people commit crimes together or are accused of committing crimes together. So 2 or 3 people are accused in the same indictment. That means legal aid society will have defendant number 1, and then there'll be a court-appointed lawyer for defendant number 2 and defendant number 3.
I see.
Those come off of a list.
Okay.
And
the lawyers.
Yeah. The list is maintained usually by the County Bar Association.
The bar, okay.
And the section of the law which allows the list is called Article 18B of the County Law of the State of New York. That's why where 8 comes from 18B.
Oh, I see.
So,
okay.
Now, 18B lawyers, they don't have 600 cases because you only take as many as you want. You're allowed to say, I only want so many.
Okay.
And the pay is very low. So if you do it, it's you're trying to help the system. Now, most 18B lawyers are former legal aid lawyers. They quit legal aid. They don't like it anymore. It's too busy, too hard.
They know how corrupt it is.
Become an 18B lawyer. You can have a much smaller caseload. Plus, you can now have civil cases on the side and make your living that way.
Okay.
I did that myself.
Because you can't make your living. You can't make your living defending the disadvantaged.
Well, legal aid society is a salary job.
Yeah, right.
So you get a salary.
Yeah.
Modest.
Yeah.
But it's a living.
Okay.
18B, you get paid by the hour, by the case, a very small amount. You can't make a living doing that.
But you do have to make a living in the end.
You do it as a public service, and also it keeps you in the court system. The judges know you, the other lawyers know you, and then you develop a private practice.
A lot of that's happening with the law. People who knows who, not what, and things they had over coffee, and a lot of things seem to be going on at that level. Personal, who knows who?
Exactly.
Who knows who is helpful. It's not dispositive.
Okay.
That is, in other words, if somebody knows you, you call them on the telephone, they're more likely to talk to you, and that does improve the result. It doesn't mean that you're going to get what you want, but it does mean that they will answer your call.
Yeah, because there's leeway for judgment.
That's the thing that's important.
But see, what I'm trying to explain to Paul and you guys, express to you is this. It does boil down to who you know. Okay, one of the things you have to understand is that if
there is a structure.
Well, there's a structure there, but that structure is completely corrupt. That structure is completely corrupt sometimes.
Really?
But the bottom line is
you agree with that, Paul?
No, what I would say is it's only as good as the people in it.
Okay.
If the people are corrupt in it.
Well, this is what happens. If the people who become judges, assistant DAs, defense lawyers who are really dedicated and want to do a good job, that's when the system functions well. Okay. When you get someone who's got burnout or badly motivated or who may be corrupt, then, it hurts the whole system.
Does it hurt if you have somebody who has big political ambition to try and climb up the political
ladder? That's right. Excuse me.
I don't
that
think
hurt
that,
the system?
yes.
In
my opinion, yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Because there's a lot of that going on.
Well, you have to put your ego aside.
Okay. But you have to understand something. A lot of times,
you know what I mean?
Yes.
Excuse me. A lot of times with the legal aid society, especially 18B lawyers, what happens a lot of times, as many cases they win, it all depends on what law firms accepts them or what law firms appoints them.
There are law firms and there are law firms.
There are law firms and there are law firms. So there's ego there. So one of the things we have to understand. And money. And there's racism. One of the things we got to understand here, we got to stop kicking the can down the road, and I'm ready to throw the dishes on the floor.
Whatever happened to...
Excuse me. I'm ready to throw the dishes on the floor, okay? I'm not ready to make jokes about this, because I'm very serious about this. There's racism here in America. And the most corrupt system in America is the legal system.
Okay.
The problem is black folks in this country has been disfranchised for the past 450 years, and nobody's saying a damn thing about it. I'm sick and tired of sitting around trying to deal with a solution. The main thing is creating a solution.
Yeah,
and the way to create the solution is to deal with bringing the law library into effect. The bottom line is that by doing this particular job and doing this particular issue, it's a way of us dealing with the disfranchisement of black folks in this country. We have been disfranchised in this system. If you start looking at the generations in prison today, eventually you're going to have to leave prison today.
That's
you
right.
got a whole generation of black men locked up. If it was fair, why are there so many black men locked up and not many white men locked up?
Well, I've had people here talking about that, foster care and everything, and the people that are hassled on the street, 80-90% are black and brown. People that are arrested are black and brown.
And they're
people
medicating.
who have their kids taken away are black and brown.
But you got to understand what they're doing.
Black and brown.
We're trying
it's pretty obvious that is.
But they're medicating. See, one of the things they're doing in the state of New York also, if the family is a poor family, and you have 4 or 5 kids, and the state of New York or the federal government tells me that they're going to give me $500 a month to medicate my child, I'm going to medicate my child if I'm poor. I'll medicate all 5 of them if I have to get that $1,500 a month.
But
the bottom line is that we're talking about a system that's completely corrupt. You know how when you go to school and the student and your guidance counselor will call you down to the office, or the principal will call you to the office and sit down and talk to you and ask you what's going on, what's on your mind, what's bothering you. Today they tell you that you're disruptive, and they think that you need the judges will turn around and medicate you with an order from the court. This is what's going on in the black community.
True fact.
Well, to me, it's a combination. It's a combination of history, race, and economics, all mixed up in a brew that is bad. And that's why.
And has been historic.
Yes.
That's right.
And so the law library that we have in mind, we have a board of directors, we've got an agreement, we made an application to the State Education Department for approval. It's not just to provide books. I'll read to you from what we wrote
by
here.
all means,
The goals of the Public Charitable Community Law Library of Harlem will be to provide a state-of-the-art law library for the general public of the Harlem community, to encourage young people of the community to become attorneys, and thus to address urban youth violence, to promote scholarships to the community's youth for college and law school, and to promote the knowledge of New York City, New York State, and federal law among the Harlem community, and to honor the community's legal pioneers, including lawyers, judges, law librarians, paralegals, and law students, and students of the law. The idea is...
Sounds like a good idea to me.
The knowledge itself, knowledge itself is a kind of wealth. And if you can get more young people to become lawyers, that enriches the community in a way that it is impoverished now.
Are there any institutions that mimic this that have existed?
No. We came up with this
new territory.
We had a number of meetings in my office. Cornelius brought all the people who he thought would be good board members, and we hashed this out for hours to decide that this is what the goals ought to be, and this is the way we can enrich a community that has been impoverished in its knowledge of the law. See, this is a bottom-up thing rather than a top-down thing. This is not any government agency saying, okay, this is what is good for you. This is the people in the community coming in to a law office, mine, not being modest about it, and saying, okay, look, this is what we need. So I try to help them get organized.
Good for you. You've been helping all along.
Harold, but you know, so what we have to do is deal with statistics too. There's only 3% of black doctors in this country. There's only 12% of black lawyers. That's a disgrace. To sit around to call yourself an Afro-American and know nothing about Africa, and then you're going to call yourself an American and know nothing about the Constitution. The Constitution is the first thing you should know about if you're in a country and understand the laws that you're in this country to deal with addressing issues of who you are. The Constitution is the laws of America. The laws of each state has a different law, but the federal government, the federal law is the federal law throughout the country itself. So you have 2 standards of different laws. But the point I'm saying to you is that we are looking at trying to address issues of black people that's been disfranchised in the system, and there's a lot of intelligent black men out there, intelligent black women out there that should be in the legal system to deal with addressing legal issues, especially when you've been enfranchised for so long. The bottom line is it's the greatest thing in the world to deal with somebody to change the law. In the early 60s, when you had Martin Luther King or Stokley Carmichael or Julian Bond, or even dealing with Michael Mex, and you had all these great pioneers, even dealing with Percy Sutton or Marshall.
Love
Percy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And also you have Judge Bruce Wright, which white folks call him Cutting Loose Bruce. I call him the Honorable Bruce Wright. He wrote the book called Black Road, White Justice.
Thank you very much. I love the book.
He found gray areas in the law. But the point I'm trying to make to you is that what we need to do is start teaching youth about the law. Let them understand what they're up against. Let them understand that by understanding the law, they'll be able to achieve stability in the country. They'll be able to achieve stability in their communities. By being disfranchised, we are legally disfranchised. The biggest problem we have in the urban communities, in the black community, is the issues with housing and crime. Okay, and these are very important issues. That's why I picked certain judges, retired judges, to be on this panel, especially when you start dealing with a criminal judge, Paul Kerson. Then when you start dealing with a housing court judge, Judge Daneberg, which is a good friend of yours as well.
Yes.
My whole point is that we are on a mission. I wish that we had more these so-called Afro-American attorneys. I wish we had more of them on board. But it seems like what we have here, and it's an embarrassment to me, is that we have more white folks sitting on the board to deal with black folks' issues than black folks deal with black folks' issues.
Why that is?
Why would that be? That's an issue with Paul. I talked to Paul about.
These places where people from Harlem are disenfranchised are what we call the lower courts. In New York City, the criminal court, the civil court, which is where landlord-tenant is a part of the civil court, the family court. These are the lower courts. Now, in the prestige of the legal field, the lower courts have lower pay. So people don't like to work there. They'd rather work in the higher courts. They'd rather have commercial clients. They'd rather have banks, insurance companies.
People would rather work with like in the old days of feudalism, they would be courtiers, and they would be sycophant to the people who have the power and the ability to bestow a better way of life.
But that's what I just told you earlier about Paul. When Paul mentioned about what law firm, when you work for the legal aid side of 18B, what law firm you're going to try to solve as many cases you can to make sure you get appointed to a great law firm. The bottom line is what I'm saying to Paul is that what Paul has to understand, the urban community is not even interested. These Afro-American lawyers are really not even interested in addressing our issues. That's why we created a law library.
Yeah, okay, that's
what we're trying to do.
They may not be interested in it because they're thought of as less remunerative at one level.
They want to be accepted by their friends.
They're less influential in terms of the power.
I think it deals with their friends and their relationships.
There's a tremendous desire on the part of a number of people to be sycophant to the power structure du jour. And there used to be, like he said, they had a constitution that was a good skeleton to understand the historical development of this country and so forth. But it's always been, the society's always been unjust. It's always been a few people who control things, whether it's 1789 France or whatever. It's always been unjust. We had chattel slavery, which is obviously unjust. It was their part of the historical order. They had a hell of a time doing that. Whatever happened to all those 40 acres and a mule that was supposed to get around?
It was never signed.
It's a human thing. Most people, lawyers included, they want a higher paying job rather than a lower paying job.
They want a better life for their family.
If you have a choice,
they want to have influence. They want to go up the ladder.
If you have a choice,
like in banking, they want to be a Goldman Sachs.
A black lawyer, this Afro-American lawyer knows damn well that by him kicking that can or stirring that pot, he knows that there will be certain law firms and certain social gatherings that he would not be invited to.
That's right.
So the bottom line is, the bottom line is what you have to understand. This is a social thing. This is
like
social,
Woody Allen. Woody
Allen's another joke. The bottom line is what the social problem we're talking about.
Well, I can get to the joke.
The social problem we have here is racism within the system itself that has to be changed.
Economic inequality.
Economic thing is something different, but the racism that exists within the system itself is absurd.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is what we're trying to do with this law library, I keep repeating myself, is that we need to start dealing with people that's been disfranchised. Black folks has been disfranchised for the last 400 years, 450 years on the shores of North America.
And the bottom line is they had no right.
That's right. And they had no rights or even deal
None. They were taken away completely.
This is the issue. This is not just an issue.
Probably worse in North America than anywhere else.
This is not an issue of dealing with civil rights at this point. It's about human rights.
This is translating into 2011. We need more lawyers in the black community.
Okay.
Be they black or white.
Dedicated. Yeah. And do we need structural change in the structure of the law?
Sure.
Is the system of the law in place unable to bring sociologically, politically, economically, and so forth, justice, or is it structurally unable to provide that, given the structure of the society?
It's a very good question.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Very good. I went to a lecture.
And will it ever become able to begin universal justice as something that could actually ring down from the mountaintop, like Martin King said?
Okay.
It hasn't seemed to.
I went to a lecture at New York County Lawyers.
Yes, sir.
Chief Judge gave a lecture, Chief Administrative Judge. New York State has 1,200 judges, 4 million cases.
Wow. Wow.
That means each judge has so many cases that they rely heavily on the lawyers to help them decide.
I would think.
They can't be, less than 1% of cases can go to trial, which means all the rest have to get settled.
Right.
That's the job of lawyers.
Yes,
now,
indeed.
if lawyers are unwilling to work in the lower courts where most of the cases are, you got big problems. You have people who are what we call pro se. Pro se means no lawyer. And the people think, oh, well, I can't afford a lawyer. It turns out that's not true. There's a lot of lawyers who are out of work, and a lot of people don't have lawyers. So how are we going to, bridge that gap? Well, that's one of the points of the Harlem Law Library.
I want to say something also real quick.
Major institution you're proposing.
We're trying to make a major institution which will match up young people to become lawyers and make them dedicated to practicing law in their own community.
And maybe they'll understand the law and the sociological, political context of the reality in order to make it better.
Let me explain something to you.
That's a big, important.
Excuse me. Let me explain something to you so you understand something. I like this racial thing, though. I want to stick to the issues. The bottom line is that what's happening is that the Innocent Project did an investigation.
Innocent Project.
The Innocent Project.
Yeah, I don't know what.
The Innocent Project was created by Shaq.
Barry Shack.
Barry Shack. There used to be the attorney for.
He used to be a legal aid lawyer.
He used to be the attorney. Used to be the attorney for O.J. Simpson. He used to be a legal aid attorney.
In the Bronx.
Okay. So basically what's happening is that he created a project called the Innocent Project. And by doing that, he found out that by doing an investigation within the state of New York, he found out doing an investigation of the Innocent Project, they found out that New York City has the highest violation of people's due process rights in the country.
Really?
That's right. And it was
New York State?
New York State has, New York State, I just told you, Harold.
Okay, I missed it.
New York State has the highest violation of due process rights in the country. Okay, this was stated not only by the Innocent Project, by New York One. It was on TV. New York One actually expressed this disturbing survey. By doing this survey, I'm thinking it's Texas, North Carolina, New Orleans. I'm thinking it's
worse than Texas.
It works in Texas.
How can you imagine that? I can't imagine.
I couldn't imagine that either. But the Innocent Project was the one that.
One way we keep better track of it.
Yeah,
that's
but also New York is a progressive state.
But the Innocent Project is the one that did the survey and was also surveyed by New York One.
You trust the figures?
Excuse me, whatever. The bottom line is what I'm trying to do at this point is speak to the young lady that actually did the interview on New York One. I'm going to bring her on one of our panels. And I'd like to bring her, and if you have questions about it, what I'd love to do is bring her on one of the shows here and let her tell you. And why she did the survey. You have people in New York State that's been in prison for so many years, which the Shaq has been working so hard. Just recently, all these statistics are coming up. Finding out that New York City has the highest violation. That's why a law library is needed. We're not talking about just black and white.
Violations of procedure.
Violation of procedure of the law. Violation, not only just violation.
That's important.
Well, it's more complicated than that.
Yeah, it gets very complicated.
It's very complicated.
Yeah.
This is, being a lawyer is a hard job, a very hard job. It's also a creative job. A lot of people don't think of it that way. But if you're defending somebody, you have to think up what's the best way to defend this person.
Exactly.
First of all, you have to have time to do it.
Right, true.
Okay? What I found all the years I was doing it, you wind up doing this when you're taking a shower. You wake up in the middle of the night.
Like any creative process. In a sense,
I keep a notebook by the side of my bed. So when I wake up in the middle of the night, I have an idea how to defend somebody. I write it down so I don't forget.
Don't you have a thing you could write in the shower on the wall of the shower?
Get out of the shower and write it down. Anyway, it requires this dedication to doing it. Now, if you don't do that, if you're not constantly thinking about how am I going to defend this person, when you get to court, it's okay, well, the plea offer is this.
Exactly.
We're not going to trial with this. I got too many cases anyway. Plus, look,
delay,
might lose. Could get much more time if you lose. The safer thing is to take the plea. I mean, oftentimes you decide, even if you've diligently planned the defense, that it's just not going to work.
But you think there's a body of people who are committed at just say an ideological level in justice? They believe in justice, and that's why they went into the law. Or is that dreaming?
This is a very
dreaming. Or do they get subverted by reality?
That's a very good question.
You understand?
Paul, real quick.
Let him deal with that question.
Let me just say this real quick before I forget. One of the things we have to understand is that when Paul mentioned about flea bargain.
Plea bargain.
Same thing. I may have pronounced it wrong. The bottom line is that by doing the flea bargains, a lot of times people, when you start dealing with the time they're going to get, once you start explaining to them if they go to trial, of the time they're going to get, they take the plea. Okay? So the bottom line is that a lot of times the lawyers are lazy. And a lot of times, like I said before, what happens is that lawyer may come along and may have an agreement with the state of New York saying, you give me this case, I'll give you that case.
That's like washing hands.
It's like washing hands. When the judges sit around having
we're not
cocktail
supposed to do
parties,
that.
you're not supposed to do that, but it happens. When they sit down with their cocktail parties with their friends, don't think judges don't sit around with judges and discuss cases.
I think
don't think the district attorney. What happens is that the lawyers, the judges, the lawyers, the district attorney's office, the police department, all of them should start dealing with addressing issues and looking at how they deal with prosecuting cases. How they're dealing with prosecuting black cases is absurd within the state of New York and this country.
And also not doing everything in the 19th tee or something like that and everything. And I thought you came up with something when you said flea bargaining. I thought you said flea bargaining, you know, it's like a thing. I think there's something creative in all of that, but we were talking to you about youth. Youth has an idealistic thing. They want to help people. That's something that's part of youth. It seems to be they go into the law for that reason, trying to do good, and then they get subverted by the reality.
Let me explain about
and
that.
how is the maturation rate of idealism trying to help the least among us, like all our wisdom schools have said, our political leadership, progressive political leadership has said, how much is that impetus to help the least among us denigrated by confrontation with the historically inherited, reifying the inherited institutions that are out of date with what the future requires if we're to have something like universal justice and moving that way.
This is my experience with that. If you take a full-time job as a public defender, or in New York we call it the Legal Aid Society, or one of the Legal Aid Society what I call clones. That is, there are numerous legal aid societies, not just the Legal Aid Society. They have various names. If you do this full-time and you have this 600 caseload or 500 or whatever it is, after a while you start to look at everybody's a criminal, because that's all you see. You know, you think there's a criminal class, and even the most idealistic person, after 3 or 4 years of this, they just. It's very difficult to keep going.
Must be hard. Yeah, it must be
now,
hard.
the 18B system, that is, you're doing this part-time, not full-time, and the rest of the time you have civil cases, to me, is a much better system. Because you're not looking at people as a professional criminal class. You know, a person can have a criminal case today and a civil case tomorrow. A person is a person. It's not. It's not like a group of people who are constantly getting rearrested again, which is what you see in legal aid. Which is why a lot of people, after 3 or 4 years, they leave. The same is true of being an assistant district attorney. People who leave after 3 or 4 years, that's wise. People who make careers out of it, after a while, it's, you know, there's a criminal class out there. This, to me, is the mindset and how I've been able to keep my idealism all these years, 35 years doing it.
Thank you.
This is how you keep it. This is your neighbor's son. That's how you think of it. This is your neighbor's son. And what language they speak, what country they came from, what their race is, completely irrelevant. Completely irrelevant.
That doesn't exist, Paul.
Well, that's how I think of it.
That's like you're an individual. You're an individual, Paul.
And also, I wonder if we couldn't take in terms, I brought up something a little while ago, going back to 1789 and so forth. Sarah Flounders told us there's more concentration of wealth in the United States of America now than there was in 1789. France.
I wouldn't be surprised.
The issue being that the injustice has been historically, James Joyce, I'll get philosophical a little bit here. James Joyce said, history is a nightmare of injustice from which we're attempting to awaken. Are we making any progress? Are we making any progress out of history?
Yes.
Is there an advance? Are we making progress? Is the progress in a direction toward equitable situation for all in a systems way, where everybody's included, rather than only the powerful.
Here was the big progress. The big progress was 1966, when public defenders were invented. Before that, we didn't have it.
Well, you're talking about it at a certain level. What I'm trying to say is at another level that we're getting to the point
if they respect
the conditions, the technologically augmented, a new science, new capability, are we moving to where a greater percentage of the world population, in a world population, is able to be seen, to be able to be worthy, and able to have a reasonably good and improving standard of living? Or are we going backward from a date when we were at a major point of moving toward universal justice of everybody, and that we're able to move toward that kind of thing like Martin King said, we may be moving to? Are we going backward from a certain point? You say the 60s. Could it?
Can I speak a minute?
Is there any hope for this?
If people start respecting the law and start doing that Constitution the way the Constitution should be dealt with, and it applies to equally to people of color, then most likely it can be changed.
But it hasn't been.
Excuse me, it has not been. And the bottom line is that when you have legal minds, see what you got to understand somehow. You have a whole concentration of black men upstate New York and throughout the country. Eventually, they're going to have to come home. So what are they going to do with felonies? What are these black youth going to do? Half of them go upstate or go in the prison system. They're great paralegals. One of the things that we're talking about is also able to bring youth coming in to deal with being able to become a paralegal. Once you have a felony, you can't become a lawyer. You can't get a license, but you can become a paralegal. Some of these kids, some of these youth, some of these men, and some of these people are brilliant paralegals upstate because that's all they do is sit in the law library and study. So the main thing is what we're talking about is bringing in a whole generation of people that's been lost and being disfranchised to come along and seeing how we can work with them once they come out the system and bringing them into the law library to do research.
I go back to the original question. Are we making progress? Is it better now than it was 100 years ago? Is it better than it was 200 years
still
ago?
Exists,
Are we making progress?
This is why.
Okay, that's
cell
the
phones.
Thing. Are we making progress?
People
and
talk
are we
more.
just
in which way?
And why?
It's positive.
Universal.
In which way?
Are we making progress toward a society where instead of the people of influence and power able to create the structure and interpret the laws and that sort of thing, let me finish. Interpret the thing that they're all busy being sycophant to the few who have power and wealth in the society. They're being sycophant to that, as always they've been. They were courtiers at Versailles. They would try to have the favor of the king, that kind of thing. They're being sycophant to the society, and instead of being concerned with what is called the least among us. Real justice raining down for everybody, even onto an ecological context. Are we getting to where maybe we're going to make progress to that, or are we falling away by reifying outdated institutions that aren't in terms with what the future requires?
Here's the question. Here's the answer. In our society, American society, this all has to do with access to legal services, with having a lawyer. That is, the system, the judicial system, is neutral. It listens to arguments.
Is it truly neutral?
Yeah. You don't think
it favors the well-to-do?
Well, let me finish what I was going to say.
First and foremost, it favors those who have.
This is the way it is. It doesn't favor anybody, but it listens to arguments. So if you don't have anybody to present your arguments, you lose. And if you would have been a plaintiff, if you're the one with the gripe, which of course a lot of African American people are people with gripes.
I would say so. A lot of Amerindians
You never filed your case.
Properly.
You lost before you started.
You forgot to dot the T.
No, you didn't file because you said, "Oh, I can't afford a lawyer, so I'm going to give up before I start."
But how you going to say what we have?
That's the problem.
The problem is we have a problem.
That's money, maybe.
Right, it's money.
It's all economics.
It's not the judicial system that's demanding money. What it is you
need economic justice before you need to hire
a lawyer. A system that's completely corrupt, number one. And number two, the same people that write the law change the law.
All right.
Excuse me, can I speak, please?
Yes, please.
Okay?
Try to get a word in edgewise.
The bottom line is I'm trying to say to you is that when I find it's a catch-up, when there's a catch-up in the system, they change the law. They change the ball game. You're playing baseball, they're playing football. So what's happened is that we have to understand how the law changes. We have to understand that the law changes every day. And by dealing with that, we have to be on board to make sure we understand if you're sailing, if you're supposed to be going right, you go right. If you're supposed to be going left, if it's supposed to go left, if you know the law, go right. The main thing we're trying to do is make sure that you understand the basic policies of the law. And the main thing is this, by doing that, you have to understand that racism in America is at the highest it's ever been in this country.
You think so?
At the highest ever been in this country.
Jim Crow,
these people for Sarah Palin, for a black man, for me to sit here and talk, putting a bullseye on somebody's forehead as a target, they would be kicking my door in, and folks most likely would murder me before I get down to the precinct. The bottom line, Sarah Palin should be held responsible for putting that bullseye and threatening these congressmen and senators' lives. That's why this man was shot down in Arizona. People don't want to admit that.
Well, they would just say it was an ad campaign.
They don't call him a terrorist. They call black folks terrorists. Every time every time I turn around, there's an issue when a black man does something that they feel as though they they consider a terrorist act, they call him a terrorist. They have you doing with jihad. They had me on Facebook. They had changed my whole page on there. Had me saying that I was dealing with Al-Qaeda or dealing with the jihad. The bottom line is that these people are dangerous. These people have no respect to the law, especially when you start dealing with them and you start dealing with them on their own level. You start catching up with them, eventually they start running off. They start running faster.
You're talking about the extreme right wing?
I'm talking about just the system itself. I'm talking about the system itself. And it's dealing with Sarah Palin. The same thing with George W. Bush. Any other president that would ever commit a crime like George W. Bush did with his wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and not respecting international law.
But you know
excuse me, not respecting international law will be locked up and put in jail. The Prime Minister, not the Prime Minister, but the Mayor of London said if George W. Bush comes to London, they'll have him arrested.
I know that. I see that. But do you notice that it's a matter in terms of realpolitik, if you win, you make the law. And if you win, you don't get.
But you got to be in the position to make the law. You have to be in the position to make the law.
If you win, then you're above the law. And you notice that winners never go in the dock in any war crime thing or anything like that. If you win, you're above the law. So it's better. That's why you want to
George
make
Bush
sure.
wanted to do? George W. Bush wanted to change the Constitution. He wanted to rewrite the Constitution to his own favor. He didn't even sign an agreement with dealing with war crimes.
He was able to get away with it.
He was able to get away with it.
One time, one person said, "Art is anything you can get away with." So is politics in a way.
It's the same way that he gets away with it. The same way this system gets away with what they do.
Anything you can get away with if you win. And think back through all of human history. 200,000 years, you'd better be on the winning side when you're in a situation where one group is going to conquer the other, enslave them, rape the women, castrate the men, put them in shackles, and you're going to be you'd better be a winner. There's a strong tendency for people in the society to want to be sycophant to the perceived
winner. What are you talking about?
The
bottom line is very plain and simple. Real quick. I'm going to give you something real quick. You know what the bottom line is? George Bush was never elected. He was selected down in Florida. The Supreme Court should have never, ever made a decision for him to become president of the United States. Jimmy Carter wrote a very, very good essay on how he would not ever have George W. Bush selected or appointed. He was appointed, he was selected, not elected. He was changing the law. He changed the law right down there in Florida to become president of the United States. Like I said before, that's a perfect example of how they changed the law.
And if you can get away with it, you're okay. You can get away with it.
Let me tell you an experience I have.
It's illegal. But it's realpolitik. Whoever wins, then they set the pattern.
It's not exactly
and you
right.
better win. Then you better be on the side of the winner.
Experience I have.
Not on the side of the losers who are struggling. You'll be on the side of the winners. You'll be sycophant to the power be, and there's a tremendous impetus of everybody to be like worshiping the king because the king has all the power. You want to be sycophant to the power elite. Don't care about the masses who are being violent.
Let me tell you,
that's the history of humanity. We need to change it. How are we going to do it?
An experience
Your law library might be a help toward that.
An experience I have every day.
It seems to me.
The powers of the king that used to be absolute now are distributed among the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. The average citizen who has a beef doesn't get to go to the executive or legislative branches. You have to see a judge. Now, a conversation I have every day, people come in, all sorts of people come in and say, okay, look, I'm about to be evicted. I need a lawyer. I want to bring a case against my landlord, or he's bringing a case against me. What's your fee? And I'll quote him a good fee, a modest fee, whatever I say. Doesn't matter what the fee is. People say, well, I want to guarantee that I'm going to win. I said, look, you don't guarantee you're going to win. I'm not the judge. All I can guarantee is I give you your best arguments I can come up with. And a person will say, that's not good enough for me. And I'll say, well, look, I'll tell you what. If you don't hire a lawyer, here's a guarantee. You will lose. There's your guarantee. And if you don't file your case at all, you'll definitely lose.
You can do the same thing with a heart surgeon. Or any other profession.
Some people rise up and they say, okay, fine, I'll hire you or I'll hire somebody else.
And the message is get some money. That's the money.
If you hire a lawyer,
you're not going to get money by helping the poor.
If you hire,
are you? You can't get any money helping the poor. You can only get money by helping the rich.
That's not strictly
tremendous
true.
impetus.
That's not true.
No, more or less.
Let me tell you
who gets rich helping the poor.
Let me tell you how that. Let me tell you how that's.
Really?
Okay,
listen, if you say so.
You don't get rich helping the poor,
but
you can make a living.
It's a hell of a hard.
Let me explain how that's done.
To the rich.
the way our society is now, who's rich and who's poor is not a permanent thing. It's up, it's down, it's up and down. People, they have a good job, they lose the job, they have a bankruptcy, they come out of it.
With all due respect, Paul, it's always been a small group. It's about less than 5% own all the capital assets. It's always been like that. There's a few people, the emperors, the kings of England, the bankers, the people who own all the assets is a tiny group of that, and we're all like, in a certain sense, serfs on their estate. We go along when they sell the company, just like the pigs and the cattle. We're like serfs on a feudal estate. All the assets, increasingly responsible for production, are owned by a tiny plutocratic class in every country in the world and in the international order. It's nothing like anything like universal justice economically anywhere in the world.
Here's what the philosophy that I've developed. Okay. Most lawyers don't have it, but I have it. It goes like, and my partners have it. We all have this. We operate this way.
Okay, good.
People come in.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
We don't care what economic class they are. Okay. We hope we'll get some wealthy people, but whoever they are, if they're willing to pay us some kind of a fee, we will do the best we can. And if we do a good job, they will tell their cousin, their neighbor, their uncle, their friend,
Okay, word them out.
Poor people are related to middle-class people who are related to wealthy. You know, we're all brothers. We're certainly all cousins. There's no question about that.
But you know, I'm going to say something about Paul, though.
There's a strong class conscience.
Excuse me, I'm going to say something about Paul, though. You know, one of the things I love, he's my brother.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're my brother.
Yeah.
Okay, but one of the things I love about Paul is that Paul, every case that I bring to Paul would, if he can't help you, he'll tell you he can't help you.
Yeah.
And then he'll sit down.
That.
You've seen how he gets down. I mean, I love how he gets down. And then I see how he deals with these fees sometimes. I'm trying to figure out how did he survive. You know what I'm trying to say? But the thing is,
it's not easy.
But you know what the bottom line is? You know what the bottom line is? He has a heart. And the bottom line is that by him having a heart, I met his partners. Okay, at the law firm, Leavitt, Kerson, and Duane. Now I met Duane. Duane walks out of his office. Walks out of his office and looks at me and says, Cornelius, gives me his handshake, this big hug, and says to me, Cornelius, I love what you're doing. Keep up the good work. He says, if you ever need anything from me, let me know what you need, and we're there for you. Okay. Paul said the same thing. I'm not saying Paul is planning on retiring anytime soon because he don't like me telling you that. Paul said to me, this is how beautiful he is. Paul says to me,
you're telling tales on Paul? You're telling tales on my buddy Paul?
So Paul says,
I want to hear this now.
Let me tell you something. Paul turns around, and what Paul says to me?
What did he say?
He says, Cornelius, this is my dream. If the law library does happen, and we can make this thing happen, when I retired, I would like to work in the law library.
Yeah, I would.
When he told me that, that showed me. When he told me that, coming from him with such sincerity, I almost started crying. I sat in and then told other people about it. Paul says to me, don't be telling people I want to retire anytime soon. Okay? But the bottom line is that he told me that, and the sincerity he had for that was something that made me cry. And the bottom line is, I said to myself, I wish that we had other people like him that would be that emotionally involved with what we're trying to do. And the bottom line, he jumped in with both feet. He didn't bother to even turn around and even question what we were doing. And then he turns around, and then I had a meeting. He didn't even have to go. He turns around and goes to get a meeting with Joe Franklin. Joe Franklin turns around, has a meeting with him. Joe Franklin goes, you know who Joe Franklin is?
Of course.
Everybody knows Joe Franklin goes completely insane. He loves it. He turns around. He's supposed to be at the meeting with us on the 24th. But the bottom line is that to have, Joe is always, I've known Joe since I was a kid.
Have you really?
Yes, sir. I was a kid when I was a kid on Sesame Street.
He's known the whole world, or the whole world's known him.
But Joe is a person that you go to when you need something done, and Joe is something done.
Right?
He is someone of you. It's a go-between where you go to Joe and you say, Joe, this is an idea that I have. How can you work with me?
We need more such people.
Just same way. Right. Like you too.
And institutions.
Like you, I don't have to sell you. You call me on the telephone and say to me, Cornelius, I need to talk to you. Where's Paul at? He don't even ask for me anymore. He asked for you. So I said, wait a minute, hold on a second. Who do you want first, Paul or me? Paul. Okay. But the thing is that it's a wonderful thing to have people like you guys to be able to say, Cornelius, I like your concept, I like your idea, let's make this thing happen. That's why we want you on the board.
Well, I want to be there.
Your sincerity about what you're doing,
for good or ill,
I think that you should be a part of the board.
It's a hard road to hoe.
But you've been there for me all the time, Harold. Harold, you have been there, and you always been through anything I tell you about a program to do. You always said to me, Cornelius, let's do it.
Yeah, well,
and I love you for doing this with us.
Well, we do all that. Yeah, when my daddy was in the law, he used to talk the law and all that, and I believe in this idea. I think it's grand. I'm just a little bit upset I want to know where all those 40 acres and all those mules are. And it seems to be all
the
the promises,
Constitution that we didn't receive yet.
That they
it
make.
was changed. See, the thing is that, like I said, the people that write the law can change the law. That 40 acres and a mule change. So that doesn't exist anymore.
I don't have a systematic faith in the system. I don't think the leaders, political and economic, particularly economics is far too important to be left to the economists. I don't think they have a vision that is what the future now, your technology and so forth, allows in a liberating way for everybody to be involved in an equitable way, which never they have been.
I respectfully disagree. I'm a great fan of the system. I'll tell you why. In other countries, they don't have the opportunity to do what we're able to do. We can, in a proper case, sue various executive departments. I've successfully sued the Corrections Commissioner. We can bring a complaint against any government official, any corporate official in the court system. Anybody can sue anybody.
But you can't sue a sitting judge, though. Paul, you can't sue a sitting judge.
Well, that's difficult, but there's a way to do it. The system is extremely flexible in its ability to absorb everybody's issues. That's
the district attorney's office, Paul. You can't sue the district attorney.
Well, we have a procedure called Article 78. Article 78 is you can seek judicial review of any administrative action or any corporate action. It talks about any body or officer. That statute,
that's a state, though.
Yeah, it comes from the Magna Carta, when the noblemen were able to bring the king to justice. We have that. You can do that.
1066.
Yeah.
1066.
You can do that. A lot of societies you can't do that. Right. But again, this depends on lawyers being willing to do it. Now, most lawyers, as I say, they want a high salary. They don't want to make themselves available to the general public. This is a sad thing in our profession, that the number of lawyers who are willing to make themselves available to the general public is actually shrinking.
I wasn't arguing at that level. In the United States, I was a citizen, and they've made progress over what it was and everything. And they've gotten there. And we've set a pattern for the world since the Second World War. We've emerged as a great power and so forth. We set a thing. We have our Constitution. We have our system. We had chattel slavery. We had no women's liberation, voting. All this. We've made some changes. We've got a pattern, and we got a way of thinking that we enshrine in our institutions, and those institutions are not adequate to what the future requires, because the institutions that we reify, we reestablish and base our thing in, is out of date with what in a liberated way is the promise and is now the capability that the future offers. We don't have a way to get to a future of universal justice. We're still reifying outdated institutions, all of which were predicated within a condition of injustice, and we have to deal with that. We don't have the vision thing, as they say, about a liberated order within a proper ecological context, within the broader pattern of the evolution of universal consciousness, and we have weapons that can destroy the entire species. We do not have a vision that the future requires or allows among the intellectuals. So it's the intellectuals that are falling down, and you wouldn't expect it from a politician or something, but we don't have a vision, and I'm very worried that we're going to just, in a certain sense, join entropy by blowing the whole thing up, because we don't have a vision toward the universal justice that is now called for and is still being denied.
The system's
particularly
not like,
on racial and economic lines.
The system's not like that. The judicial system, especially, if you imagine it as a chalkboard, okay, we're the chalk. Or it's an easel. We're the paint. Right. You draw on it what you put into it.
Okay.
You should show the.
I know we're showing the graphics now.
No, we should show the package.
Oh, this packet?
Yes.
Okay, let me hold it up. We're showing the graphics, and this is the thing. And we wanted to talk about the law library. Maybe when we're in with this, we can come this up on one of the cameras. And they're putting together this law library up in Harlem, a marvelous idea of advancing things. We're talking at different levels in terms of that. I'm very worried about the intellectual community falling down on the job. We don't have intellectual vision. And that's what I'm talking about. It's not the people who are manipulating the system, in my view. So here's the thing about the law library that they're intending to put up in Harlem, and we encourage them and all of that, and thank you for all the good work. Sorry we're running out of time, so Paul, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us on the show.
Cornelius, my brother, always
a pleasure.
Cornelius,
great
to
see you. Have his perceptions, and we invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again tomorrow, and that's it for now. But this is a very important thing we all want to get behind and give them support in the creation of this law library. Library of Harlem. I think it's a great idea.
We're doing an event tonight called Behind the Bench at the Harlem branch.
Yeah, you got to get up there. You got to
get
right,
at 5 o'clock.
Give Jay Dankberg my best.
I will.
Okay,
I will.
and all the other people.
And also, we
got a good group of people up there.
We also in the Amsterdam News this week. We also, we're in Amsterdam News on page 6 talking about the law library in Harlem.
That's this week's edition?
That's right, today's edition, the 20th.
What's the date?
20th. Today's the 20th edition.
Get the 20th of January issue. There's an article with a very handsome picture of this young man.
Yes, but the article is actually about.
The article
is about Paul
Kerson.
It's not about me.
Yeah, but there's a picture. There's a picture of it. Anyway.
The article's about him. I'm upset because they wrote the article about him.
Pictures of you.
Yeah, it's a picture of me. Well,
how did that happen? The pictures, 1,000 words are in a picture.
If that's the case, they may think I'm